So in our tutorial today, we're going to be starting our next unit in our Learn by Doing series. And in this unit, we're learning how to use Google Forms. We're starting with lesson 5.1, menu planning, and the focus of this activity is to learn how to create and send a form. So you can go ahead and pause the tutorial and read the know, understand, and do to yourself, as well as the overview. There are just a few things I'm going to point out before we get started. So we're going to make sure that we name our form with our first and last name in lesson 5.1. You're going to be submitting a live form URL, which I will show you how to do. And these are the new skills that we are going to be working on with the form questions down below. Okay, so before we get started, let's have our drive open and our folder for our My Forms open as well. And then we'll get started once you divide your screen the way that you see mine here. So why don't you get yourself all set up, and then we'll come back together and continue the rest of the activity. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new form. So in my Forms folder, I'm going to go ahead and click the plus sign, and we're creating a Google form. Okay, so we're going to look at form settings in just a second. The first thing I want to do is make sure that we do title our form. So our form is our first and last name. So I'm going to use my stepson's name. Lesson 5.1. Okay. And most forms are going to be pretty standard looking like this. So once you have your name set, you can just hit return or enter, and it automatically saves in your Google Drive for you in that My Forms folder. If I go back and I refresh this page, there it is. Okay. Now let's look at our form settings. So up in the top left-hand corner, we have a few buttons. We have a way to customize, which we will use in a later lesson. We're going to preview our live form, which is one of the skills in today's lesson. And then we have our settings. So let's go ahead and click on that pinwheel. Again, we're clicking on the pinwheel that says settings. Okay. Now we have different ways. Now we have our general settings, and we have different options under this tab. If we want to collect the emails of the people that we are having fill out this form, then we can check this box. Because we are in LBUSD at the moment, we're going to restrict it to only people that are within LBUSD. So people outside of LBUSD won't be able to access this form. If we want to limit it to one response, so we don't want people to fill out our form more than once, then we can check this box. If we want to allow them to change their mind, like we're doing a menu, and what if they select chicken and rice and then later decide, wait a second, that's not the option I want. They can go back and edit it if that was an option we wanted, and then we'll talk about summary charts and responses later. So if you want people to know what other people who are attending this banquet are going to eat, then you can select this box here. A lot of that might be confusing right now, but once the form is done, it'll be a little bit easier to understand. Presentation is the way that it looks to the people that are taking this survey or quiz. So if you have multiple pages, you can show the progress bar, where at the bottom it will say, page 2 out of 6 or whatever. If it's a quiz in particular, you might want to shuffle the question order so they don't go 1, 2, 3 every single time. And then if you want to have them submit another response, you can show the link for them to do that. And then you can type your own special message that people will receive when they're done. Okay. And then the final tab is quizzes. So if you want this to be a quiz, which is an assignment that we'll do later on in this unit, we can click make a quiz. And then we have different options that will open up for us then. So we're not going to worry too much about this stuff right now. I just wanted to walk you through it really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel and move on. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do, and it says automatically it changes our form name to the name at the top here, but I can see that I want it to look like this. I want the title of my form to look like that. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to banquet menu planning. Okay. And then we want to add a form description. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and type this right here where it says, please help the committee and so on. I'm going to pause the tutorial and type that. You go ahead and pause the tutorial and do the same. All right, so we should have at this point added our form description. That's the next layer in our skills. Now we'll move on to creating a question. So we have our question here, and there are a few different options for creating a question. So we can have a question that's short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, and so on. And we're going to look at these later, but for this activity, let's just do multiple choice. Okay, and then what we're going to do is type our question, select a main dish with a colon, and then we're going to list these. So we have baked chicken and rice. If I hit return, it will give me the next line. Vegetarian lasagna. Hit return, and it will give me the next line. So I'm going to continue with those three, and then you do the same. All right, so we do have our first question finished. If you needed to make any editing, like if there was an extra line on accident, you could remove it with the X. You can add pictures. Those are all things for later. But if there's anything that you needed to change about it, then you can do so. We're going to add another question. So what's really easy to do is to just click right here, the plus sign, and do add a question. And nothing else about it will change. It will still be multiple choice. So we can go ahead and do that now. If you are working on another question and you realize, oh, I messed up on the one prior, you can just click on it and change it from there. So it's very simple to make editing changes to your questions. Now, if you needed to, for example, copy a question, then you can do that here and it will create a duplicate right underneath. If you want to get rid of a question, you just delete it. It's very simple. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add another one, and then I'm going to continue with the rest of the menu items. If you could go ahead and pause the tutorial and continue as well, we'll come back together once we are done. All right, so I have all of my questions finished. If there's anything that I see like a spelling mistake or maybe an extra option that I didn't need, I can click on that particular question and make any editing changes. I can also do things like move answers around, stuff like that. So, so now that that is done, I can also move complete questions around by clicking on this here. But I'm going to go ahead and leave everything right where it was. Those are just some options for you. So all of them, I'm just going to double check to make sure they're all multiple choice. Okay. Okay, so I have all of my questions exactly how I need them to be. The next thing that I want to do is make sure that when somebody is filling it out, it looks like how I want it to look. So if I click on the eyeball here, it's going to show me a live form. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that eyeball. And then here is the live form. Okay, so with that live form, I know what people are going to see when they click on the link that takes them to this survey. So again, just making sure that it's exactly how I want it to look. We're not worrying about editing changes or anything right now. Now, there's a couple of things that you can do to get back to your editing form. Now, obviously, I already have the tab open, so I can switch to the tab. I can also, if you notice, because it's my form that I created, there's a little pencil in the bottom right-hand corner. If I click on that little pencil, it's going to take me back to the editing form as well. Okay. Now, the other option, if I want to just close this, if I don't need to make any editing changes, or I know that I already have it open in another tab, I can just close the tab. Okay, so it doesn't affect the form at all. All right, so that's how we close a live form. Now, to accept responses, if you notice up at the top here, we have two different menus. So we have the questions where we created our survey, but then we have responses. So right now it's accepting responses. So as soon as I send this to someone, they're going to be able to fill this out. If I were to toggle that over by clicking on it, now nobody can fill this form out. So let's say if I were actually having a banquet and I don't want to receive any more replies, I have enough, then I can go ahead and turn this form off. So even if somebody who got an email later on, it doesn't matter, they're still not going to be able to fill this out. But right now I want people to be able to fill it out. So I'm going to make sure that I am accepting responses. Okay. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to send it. And this is going to be a part of what you turn in. So you're submitting a live form URL. So when I want to send this to somebody, I'm obviously going to click the send button. And there are a few different options. I can send them an email if I know their email. I can send them a link, which is what we're going to do in just a moment, or I can embed it in a web page. The way that you often see like attendance in my class is often done with an embedded form. So we're going to use the link tab. So this is, and just to make it a little shorter, we're going to click shorten URL. This is how we are going to submit this assignment. So when you are ready to submit, so make sure you check your spelling and all of that stuff. When you're ready to submit this, you're going to go ahead and click send. And then you're going to click the center option here. And I always like to shorten the URL. So I'm going to go ahead and shorten the URL and copy. And then in Canvas, you're going to submit. This is what you're going to submit to me to get your grade. So again, you'll submit this link to me. That's the live form URL. That's what you're going to submit to me in Canvas. Okay. So after you've copied it and submitted it to me in Canvas, then you are done. And very quickly, just like any other Google activity, make sure it says all changes saved in Drive. And then you can go ahead and close this, and this activity is complete.